crazy as the review of Sonic Frontiers has been, a whole nother bit of footage focusing on the combat had released 2 days after the initial review, and people went just as crazy over this one as the other one. But stick tuned to this video because not only am I going to talk about all the hidden details that you missed from that video, but I'm also going to talk to you about a theory I have in terms of the storyline for this game, because looking at these details, there are some definite hints as to what the story of this game is going to be. Hey beautiful humans, I'm RidersDX, and today I've got 30 exciting details about Sonic Frontiers from the combat video, and so let's go ahead and just dive right into it. At number 1, this is something I saw on Twitter, otherwise I definitely would not have recognized it, but Sonic has longer quills in an intro here compared to the previous footage. This leads to believe that this footage is later in the game's development, or at least this portion is here, because I think the rest of the footage is still from like the same period that they recorded the other exploration footage, but maybe they saw some of the feedback where like, oh, let's actually show off the current model and let people know that this is the actual model that Sonic's gonna be in Frontiers, because apparently people actually really care about the spikes here, so yeah, it is what it is. At number 2, Sonic is also spotted with some idle animations here, which I'm sure someone made a big deal about on Twitter as well, so I just wanted to point that out here. But it's good that there's idle animations because there's definitely going to be a lot of points where Sonic's just going to be standing there while the player's trying to figure out the puzzle. It's definitely good to have Sonic like do something while the player's trying to do whatever they're trying to do. At number 3, so I'm going to credit Blue Wolf over here. He's a Twitter user and someone that I know, and they actually dug into the metadata of this video and found some interesting details like the names of the enemies, or at least like internal names for the enemies. These may not be the actual names of these enemies, so I just want to point that out, but it may give us some hints as to what they're actually going to be called. And so according to the metadata, the name for this balls like robot is called Bubble. It may not be final, but that is the internal name they gave, so don't call it the balls robot because yeah, I think enough said. At number 4, talking about this robot itself, it's a pretty simple robot. When it's glowing red, it's about to emit electricity, which is when Sonic should not be attacking it, as we see Sonic get damaged a few times whenever he does. And so basically you just wait for the robot to stop electrocuting itself and then you can attack. That's basically all there is to it. At number 5, we also see rings are lost when he gets hurt. So it looks like the rings are still tied to Sonic's life. I had initially theorized that the rings actually weren't a part of the life system in the previous video because we saw hearts be a collectible there. But it does look like the rings are still tied to Sonic's health, and so the hearts are probably for some kind of other purpose then that we just don't know yet. However, I will say I think the ring system is probably more similar to what they did in Shadow the Hedgehog, where when Shadow got hurt, he only lost like 20 rings or so and he still kept most of them, because there aren't that many rings like scattered throughout this environment here. And so if Sonic just lost all his rings right there, there's nothing else for him to collect, so it would be very easy for him to die. So it still kind of seems like it's going to function like a health bar system, it's just it's rings instead of a health bar. At number 6, you can see that Sonic's able to homing attack and perform punches and kicks on the enemies afterwards. Very similar to how Shadow the Hedgehog did in Sonic 06, but I think in this case, you're pressing different buttons to initiate certain kicks or punches here, and so that's how it's going to allow for certain combos to be made, which results in some different kinds of moves that we see later on in this video. At number 7, Sonic is also able to strafe in different directions to dodge attacks. I think this will definitely come in handy, especially with multiple enemies on screen, which is definitely going to be a thing here. He's even seen doing it mid-air as well when he's homing attacking, which is really cool because that just makes Sonic seem that much more aerobic and such, and definitely gives us some more freedom in his movement. At number 8, we see a bunch of finishing moves in this video, but the first one that we see is at the end of this combo. It seems like he's actually teleporting away from the enemy at first, but then he bursts into this powerful looking blue aura surrounding him and he just dashes into the enemy and attacks them. So it does look very satisfying to pull off, but I just think it's really interesting that Sonic just teleports back instead of like us seeing him like go back. So I think that's a little interesting. Maybe the animation is not complete because some of these animations definitely don't feel like they're complete. At number 9, there's also another one where Sonic flies away and then launches a kick towards a robot, almost like he's some kind of rocket, and so that does look very satisfying as well, and the animation here does look a little bit more fine-tuned compared to everything else we've seen so far. At number 10, this was seen very early on in the initial teaser, but I'm just going to mention it here. Sonic also has a finishing attack where he unleashes a tornado on the robot, and so I'm getting flashbacks of the blue tornado in Sonic Heroes. This is making me feel very happy. I do hope they kind of fix the animation a little bit because it doesn't really look like it's finished. It just looks a little bit weird, but it definitely looks like one of my favorite moves going into this game because I love the tornado. I think that's a great move for Sonic. I'm so glad they brought it back here. At number 11, you can hear multiple grunts from Sonic during this combat, and it definitely sounds like he's taking a little bit more of a darker tone this time compared to previous games, as Sonic is noticeably a lot less lighthearted in this game. He seems like he's a lot more focused and a lot more aggressive in this game compared to the previous ones, and so that definitely is a noticeable difference in the voice direction compared to previous Sonic games. At number 12, Sonic can actually be seen collecting these blue objects from the robot afterwards. This is likely experience points, as Sonic is likely going to be leveling up in this game through his combat skills, because that just seems like a very natural direction for this game to take, and I also believe that was a leak from earlier on as well. They almost look like tiny computer chips, so I wonder if there's like a story reason they look like that, or if it's just like general experience points that you see in like any other game. At number 13, I noticed that this clicking sound has been going on throughout the previous footage and this footage as well. However, in this footage, you hear a clicking sound and then you see that the robot spots Sonic in this trailer. This could be a sound that's just coming from the robots, and as Sonic runs past or runs through the environment, he just hears this clicking sound from a bunch of robots that are in the area, and so that clicking sound might just be the result of robots noticing Sonic in particular. At number 14, Sonic has an actual projectile attack here. I assume he's shooting out bursts of wind, that's what it looks like, and he's just shooting them out constantly at this robot, and it looks really devastating and like a really powerful attack, and so it does look very satisfying. I'm looking forward to trying that out as well. At number 15, there is this flower pot looking robot here that simply needs to be attacked by flipping it over with Sonic's spin circle and exposing his vulnerable state. So it seems pretty simple. It's kind of similar to in Sonic Heroes when you had those robots with those shields, or that little like green turtle robot. You had to use a blue tornado to flip it over and then you could attack it. So it seems like a very similar thing here. At number 16, according to metadata, the internal name for this robot in the metadata is Defender, which makes a lot of sense because it definitely has a huge defense quality to it, and you have to basically expose its underbelly to be able to attack it. At number 17, this robot also seems to be able to spin its shell away as an offensive attack. It kind of acts like a boomerang as it goes around the area and then comes back towards it, and so definitely an interesting time to attack the robot, but it's also going to be like, well, you better stop attacking soon because that thing is coming back and it's going to hurt you if you don't get out soon. So definitely adds a little bit more nuance to the robot, but otherwise the robot seems like a very simple enemy and not much else to it. At number 18, so I initially thought these finishing attacks were things that you had to activate at the end of combos, but it actually looks like you can activate them whenever you want, as we see Sonic launching into one of them here despite not performing any punches or kicks immediately beforehand, and so it looks like maybe you press a certain button combination, then you'll get to use these attacks as you please. At number 19, I found this to be really interesting, but it looks like Sonic doesn't need to exclusively use the spin cycle on the ground to make one. He can make one in the air as well mid-combo, as you can see over here, although it looks to be particularly weaker as it wasn't able to actually flip over the defender, so it was practically useless in this case, but still that's a pretty interesting thing, and that looks like it's the closest to the blue tornado move in Sonic Heroes that we're gonna get here. At number 20, as Sonic runs down this hill, he doesn't seem to gain speed as he immediately slows down after the speed from the dash pad wears off. So I just wanted to mention this because this is something I definitely want to talk about, but this is not really going to be the video for it. I definitely want to kind of address some of these bigger, larger scale criticisms for Sonic Frontiers, but this is a totally clear example, as you can see over here, what people seem to be really upset about when it comes to Frontiers. At number 21, we see these more mobile robots here, and they're called human in the metadata, and they definitely have a human-like structure to them, but also they definitely do not look like humans, so it's very interesting that they're called that. At number 22, they just seem like kind of generic brawler kind of robots where they primarily thrust towards Sonic with their hands, which are shaped like swords, so I will say that looks really cool. The robots have a really cool design over here. They're much more hand-to-hand combat-esque and look to be killable in different ways compared to the previous two robots where there was really one clear way to attack them, and so that's pretty cool because there's multiple ways of killing these robots, so you get to kind of use more of Sonic's arsenal to do as you please with them. At number 23, I found this to be really interesting, but it seems like the robots can actually spawn from nothing at times, completely surprising, which is kind of scary, but also is something that a lot of games do now that I think about it. What I find really interesting about this is that they spawn with that red color that resembles the color schemes of how the hallucinations of the Phantom Ruby spawned in Forces, and so this could mean a return of that plot device, and I actually see more evidence of this in later points that I'm going to talk about in this video, so definitely stick around to the end to hear more about those points, because I think as you keep seeing this, it just becomes much more obvious that that's the case here. At number 24, it seems like a minor cinematic plays once you start engaging with these giant titans, so that seems to be a clear sign that you're going to be fighting this titan and you need to take care of it or run away, and so it kind of like helps to distinguish exactly when you're in combat the robot compared to when you're not. It's not the most seamless thing in the world, but still it does make it very clear that hey, you're about to fight this robot, so you better make a decision now in terms of what you want to do. At number 25, looks like the primary attack of this gigantic titan is just to try to stomp on you with one of its limbs. That's pretty much all you see this do over here. I'm hopeful that later on in the game, if you keep fighting these titans, that they'll do more as you keep going on, because that's a pretty simple attack, and I love to see these robots just become a little bit more complicated as you go on. Otherwise, if you do the same thing all the time, then that's going to get boring pretty quickly. Number 26, we can see Sonic using these limbs to maneuver to the top of the robot, where you can find its weak spot to dunk on. What's interesting about this though is the red and blue circles here, and so the blue seems to speed you up towards the robot, while the red seems to push you back, and so that's an example of something that might be able to become more challenging as you keep fighting these titans, that you'll see a bigger mix of blue and red circles compared to the majority of blue circles that we saw in this boss, which makes sense because this is likely the first level in the game. At number 27, you can see that Sonic has another review of finishing move here, where he just stomps towards a robot below him, and so this might actually just be activated by clicking on the button that activates the down stomp, and so that'd be really interesting. I like the camera angle that they use when he goes down to the robot. Number 28, what's really interesting about these robots' limbs is that rather than explode into pieces like some of the other robots here, they more so just disappear that similar looking visual effect to the Phantom Ruby, and so the other robots, like, I think some of them were actually legitimately destroyed, like you see pieces like flying out, but there were also some robots that kind of just disappeared once you attack, and this one, it clearly just kind of disappears once you finish off that limb. Like, it doesn't just explode into pieces, like it kind of progresses into this like red, like robotic like effect, and it just disappears from the screen, which is very similar to how like the bigger hallucinations in Sonic Forces disappeared, like Zavok for instance, and Metal Sonic when you fought those bosses. And so that just seems like a bigger indicator that the Phantom Ruby is playing some kind of role here, because otherwise I think they would have chosen different colors if they wanted it to be something different. Like, you wouldn't choose like red and purple to represent it, because that's exactly what the Phantom Ruby is represented by. At number 29, I thought this was really cool, but Sonic is able to use his spin cycle to bring the Titan's legs into the air, expose another weak spot he can attack. So there's a lot of potential here to strategize your own ways of taking down these robots, and I really love seeing the spin cycle being used in these ways so far. It definitely seems like one of the best additions to this game so far, and I can't wait to use it because it's such a cool move, because it's a helpful attack, but Sonic doesn't have to stop moving to do it, and so it seems like something that's perfectly integrated into Sonic's moveset, which is amazing. At number 30, when you're destroying this leg, Sonic earns an even bigger chip from it compared to the little blue chips that he earned from the previous robots. So that indicates that there will be various chips of experience you can collect, with some being of higher value. Just like in Unleashed with the Werehog, you know, there were some of those like yellow orbs that were huge, and some of them were really tiny, and they represent like different values of experience that you're earning here. And so that makes a lot of sense. There's a little bit more variety in terms of what you're going to get here. I definitely think that the story details in particular are the most interesting, because I definitely think that's intentional, the way that the robots disappear. It definitely seems like these robots are more like hallucinations. The Phantom Ruby always seemed like something that was a really big power source and a really big plot device that I think Sonic Forces just horribly underused. It just seemed like one of the biggest, most fearful things you could come up with for a game, and it was just kind of like there in Sonic Forces. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sonic Frontiers decided to like correct that a little bit and make use of the Phantom Ruby in a more effective way, because to kind of like conjure up this entire like wasteland that Sonic is trapped in would be quite the feat, and I'm really curious to see if the Phantom Ruby really is a part of this, or maybe the Phantom Ruby has actually been corrupted or something by a bigger force, and that just means that the world is in even bigger peril than before. So I don't know, that's kind of my theory. I think that's what's going on here, because it just looks too similar to not, you know, consider that as a possible scenario. But nonetheless, it could also be something completely different, because maybe Sega, you know, just like they did with 06, they wanted to just forget about Forces completely and just erase all of it. But still, I think the color schemes really do point towards something, and I'm really curious to see if maybe there's just a whole nother aspect of the Phantom Ruby that we haven't learned about yet. I think if there is, Ian Flynn is definitely the perfect guy to do it, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he dived into a little bit more about the Phantom Ruby in the Sonic Forces comics. Unless those comics were written by someone else, I really don't know. I'm a fake fan, sorry. But definitely let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What bullet point were you most interested by? Which ones do you think are true? Which ones do you think are false? Let me know why not. And just I think we're getting another Sonic Forces tidbit very soon. I think they're going to interview one of the directors of the game, and we're going to hopefully learn even more details about this game and learn more about the storyline, how it's going to work and all that. And just yeah, it's looking like an exciting time for Sonic fans, whether you're into the game or not. So thank you all so much. Special shout out to my patrons, Team Rattle Sonic Gamer, Andrew Coughlin, Trash Q, and Claw84. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your support. This is Riders, riding out. Bye.